Good morning, class. How are you today? I am Teacher Jean, and I will be your English teacher for today. Are you all excited for new learning?
Yes.
Great! So sit back, relax, and enjoy while learning new things. Before we start, I will give you a series of pictures here posted on the screen. Okay. I will give you a minute to observe these pictures, and you need to describe to me what can you see or what comes into your mind. Let's have picture number 1. Yes, let's call Marco. Yes, Marco, what can you say about this picture?
A mother fairy and a child fairy playing together.
Wow, very nice answer. Clap your hands. That's right. It looks like a mother and a child who are playing in front of...
The moon.
Yes, great. How about Aya? The second picture, please.
A teacher reading a storybook to his students.
To her?
To her students.
Yes. And how many students do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and
8.
8. Great. Yes, Nicholas. The third picture is...
A unicorn playing on the water.
Wow, how did you know that it's a unicorn and not a
Because
horse?
it has a horn.
Great. So only unicorns have
Horn.
horn. And do you think this is real?
No.
Oh, let's move on and we will know more about it later and we will see if you are right. How about the fourth picture, Ivan?
A mermaid holding his wood.
Holding her?
Holding her wood.
Okay, it's a stick, right? And we notice that she has this, what do you call this, tail, a fish tail. That's why you recognize it as
Mermaid.
a mermaid, a half human and half fish body. Great. Next.
A baby watching a monkey on a television.
Okay, we have 2 monkeys on the television. Thank you. And the last one?
A fairy hugging a white tiger.
Very good. So all of these pictures are, what do you think? What do you think will be the topic for today?
I think fantasy and reality.
Wow. And why do you say so?
Because it has cartoons and real people.
You got it right. Our topic will all be about fantasy and reality. So let's move on. Now, I want to know how much you know about our topic for today. So I will give you a short activity. Right. Are you ready?
Yes.
Great. This is a reality or fantasy activity. Each group must have a representative. Okay? So every sentence that I will give, we must have different representatives. And each representative will be given strips of papers and a pen where you will write your answer. Now, at the end of this activity, the one who will get the highest grade will receive, or the highest score will have 98% of grade. The second group will get 96%. The third group will get 94%, and the last group will have 92%. All right. Question. If both groups are going to have the same score, then there's no problem. You will have the same grade. Now, are you ready?
Yes, we're ready.
Let's proceed. Okay. Number 1. Child labor nowadays are very common because of poverty. Is it a fantasy or reality?
Reality.
Let's see. Great! Good job! That's a reality. Number 2. Mama Bear asked Baby Bear to earn a living at the age of 7.
Fantasy.
Wow. You are absolutely correct. That's fantasy. Now, it is said here that child labor nowadays are very common because of poverty. Do you know what is child labor means?
No.
All right. So, child labor, it is, as you can see on the photo here on the screen, what can you see? There are children who carry,
A bag of socks.
yes, a bag of sack, and we don't know what's inside of it. Maybe it is,
A sand or garbage.
yes. And this word poverty in economics comes, it surrounds with these different words: dirty, poor, you are homeless, you are hungry, you are not, most of the people will not receive you socially, and then you are unemployed, you are unskilled, you are near to the violence, okay, you need help. So there are really lots of words that is associated with this. And do you know why? Why? What's the factor that can affect child labor?
Because of its lack of education.
Yes, because people nowadays are just contented not to be educated, which results to poverty. And once you are poor, you need to help one another on how to have income at home to sustain the needs of the family. And here in the Philippines, we don't have family planning. We have so many kids that we don't think how to sustain them. So most parents push their children to work even they are unskilled and lack of knowledge. Even though they are paid in a lower amount, they will just agree because it's child labor. Children are supposed not to, or mean not allowed to work. So you, as a student, you need to be very, you need to appreciate things that your parents are doing for you. Always be positive to study hard and reach your goal. Because compared to others, look the pictures on the screen, you are very lucky enough to be sent at school. Am I correct?
Yes.
Alright. So let's move to the next question. Number 3. Spider-Man is the man of all times. He works in the morning and saves people at night. Is it a fantasy or reality?
Fantasy.
Great. That's fantasy. Why do you think it's fantasy?
Because it's a movie.
It's a fictional character. Spider-Man is just a movie
Yes.
and it can't be real, right? Like, yeah. Okay. Number 2. Please read.
President Duterte is the hero of the country because of his bypass operation over drugs.
Do you agree?
Yes, it's a reality
Why do you say it's reality?
because he is the president of the Philippines.
Great. So we can really see an evidence. And you are correct. Okay, so it is true that he is with evidences. Of course, when he sit on his throne as president of the country, he started to clean up all the people who uses drugs. He even put them to jail. And some of them, he agrees to what? Kill. Am I correct?
Yes.
Mhm. So it is said that say no to drugs and yes to sports. Instead, you, as a student, when you grow up, you are highly reminded not to be engaged in drugs, but be physically active in sports instead. Diba? We have that in our health subject. A little chart here. We call it, in math, we call it pie, pie chart. Right, okay. So, these are the most abused drugs in the Philippines, based on my research. Okay, so we have here 28% marijuana, 68% shabu, and 4% inhalants or any other drugs that you need to inhale. So, looking at the chart, what part of this chart, or just tell me the color, wherein marijuana belongs, which is
Green color.
28%.
Green color.
Okay, this is 28%. You know what? You got it right. And then how about shabu, which is 60?
Yellow.
This one?
Yes.
Right. It gained the highest or the biggest part in the
Chart.
chai part. I mean, pie chart, sorry. And how about the 4% inhalant?
Orange.
Great. The smallest part in the pie chart. Wow, great. You are really attentively listening, especially to your math teacher, I guess. Let's move on. So you already know the most abused drugs here in the Philippines. So here, next one. Our soldiers are meant to fight the war to protect us. Is it reality or fantasy?
Reality.
Correct. And Batman and Justice League, the picture below, will save the world from the darkness.
Fantasy.
Fantasy because they are just,
Fiction.
yes, fictional characters. And a child with dyslexia is very poor in numbers. Fantasy or reality?
Reality.
Let me see. Great, that's reality. As you can see here in the picture, if you are a normal child with a normal brain, this is how you think and you look at numbers. 1 plus 5 is 6, 3 plus 4 is 7, 2 plus 5 is 7, 7 plus 2 is 9, and so on and so forth. But if you are a child with dyslexia, this is how you see things. The numbers are flying around, right? And you cannot determine what number is that. But in spite of that, if you just see this movie like Stars on Earth by Amir Khan and the child here, every child is special. Although he has this selection very poor in numbers, the teacher Amir Khan have found out that he has his own skills in drawing. So I bet you need to watch this. Monsters Math Squad are the best teachers in math. These are the Monster Math Squad. Is this reality?
Fantasy.
Fantasy. Yes, because they are fictional characters. But the good thing here is that they are teaching. They are characters in the TV. They are teaching the children on how to understand more mathematics. Right? So, all of you got it right. And all of you will have 98%. I hope that you enjoy the activity. Now, how did you find the activity?
I find it very interesting.
Wow, thank you. Now, why do you think it is important to identify reality from fantasy?
Fantasy is a way of making us escape reality. We need to identify that reality is different from fantasy and that fantasy is something that will never exist.
Yes, great. So, moving on, what have you learned in doing the activity?
I learned that fantasy is different from reality because reality is, we all know that we have evidence and living in the, because we are living in a reality and fantasy is imagination and fictional characters that people people created in the mind.
Very good. Wow. Very excellent answer. So, we are now going to our lesson proper. Fantasy and reality. As you said, fantasy is something that is only produced by the imagination. Whereas, please read reality.
Whereas reality is something that exists independently from the mind. A person's understanding of reality is affected by the laws of physics, social interactions and constructs, economics, politics, and science.
Okay. So when we say reality, as you said that we are living in the reality world, of course, everything that we see or everything that we believe, no, is our understanding, and we are affected. Our understanding is being affected by the laws of physics, science, the government, social interactions, and our economy. So all of this, all the things that we understand came from different aspects. While fantasy is only something that is produced by our minds. Anything that you can think of. Well, a fantasy is something you imagine which might involve characters or fictional characters like
Dragons,
unicorn.
unicorns, or an imaginary best friend.
So that is something that we saw a while ago, right? Unicorn. Yes. So these things cannot exist. Okay? Only imaginary. If you live in a fantasy world, you're not worrying much about reality. Because if you're living in a fictional or fantasy world, everything is okay. Everything is good. There's no problem. And that is something that you want. Everything is perfect. So you are not really worrying much about the reality. Because of course reality is more on what? Problems. Well, this is reality. We have problems. We feel the pain. That's it. Did you understand?
Yes,
Okay. Now, things that you will often find in fantasy includes, please read.
magic and sorcery, supernatural events, talking animals or creatures, objects with human characteristics, real people in make-believe places, characters with magical powers.
Yes. So when we say real people in make-believe places, maybe this in other movies, no, or stories, this certain people from the real world, he will go to the make-believe or fantasy places. Sit. Next, some.
Some of the character types you'll find in a fantasy include witches, wizards, fairies, princes and princesses, kings and queens, knights, dragons, talking animals, angels and devils, goblins and trolls.
Most of characters that you can find in a fantasy story are this one. Like example, Harry Potter, they are wizards, and there are also witches, right? Fairies like what?
Tinkerbell,
Yes, Tinkerbell. Princess and princesses like
Cinderella,
Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, kings and queens. Elsa, I mean, yeah, that, what's the title of that movie? Frozen. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, fantasy may be set, or the setting, or the place, usually in a faraway land, enchanted kingdom, magical forest during medieval times, imaginary world, heaven or Hades, or during the afterlife. So now you already have the idea whenever you're going to write a fantasy story. Always remember that the five what? Always remember the five elements in writing a short story. That is what? Character, setting or the place, the plot, the conflict, and the resolution. Wow. Now, okay, these are examples of fantasies that you have watched on TV or heard or read. So, that's
The Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland, The Chronicles of Narnia, Harry Potter, Watership Down, The Sword in the Stone, The Princess Bride.
okay. So, among these titles of stories, what is your favorite?
The Chronicles of Narnia.
Wow, yes. I did not yet watch that, but thank you. I will really watch that soon. Okay, so I have here a short video entitled the Alice in the Wonderland. So let's watch this. And Make sure to observe the clip properly because we will be asking questions right after this.
Alice, be under the gazebo in precisely 10 minutes. Alice Kingsley, will you be my wife?
Well, there's happening so quickly. I think I need a moment.
There is a place like no place on earth. Some say to survive it, you need to be as mad as a hatter. Which, luckily, I am. Alice, it's you. You're back. Alice!
Alice!
See? You're absolutely Alice. I'd know you anywhere. You're all late for tea!
Alice has returned to Wonderland.
Since you've been gone, Red Queen has taken over all of Wonderland. Help us make the world right again.
I need a pig here. I love a warm pig for my aching feet. Stop that.
We have our champion.
Hold on tightly.
This is impossible.
If you believe it is.
So by merely watching that Alice in Wonderland video, I hope that you have differentiated what? Differentiated reality from fantasy. So, as you see, Alice is from the real world and then went to what? A fantasy world with all the fantasy creatures that they have. So fantasy and reality in literature is, for example, we have Frozen. We have Princess with supernatural powers, Peter Pan, a fairy, and also Winnie the Pooh, a fictional character or a fantasy character with human characteristics. So in literature, these are short stories, novels that describes imaginary events and people. Right. Now, reality in literature as well is a state of things that they actually exist as opposed to an idealistic or notional idea of them. So it opposes, no, the idea of fantasy because this is real. It really exists. These are realistic stories that tells about things that could really happen. For example, journals that is written by people. This one, Jose Rizal, his life, his works, and his writings. These the newspapers that we are receiving every day. Biographies, World Almanac, and the Book of Facts. It is really written Book of Facts because it's real. It has evidences and the world history. Next, let's see how fast you can think. So this is just a short game or activity. This is fantasy versus reality. Okay, so we need to say if this is fantasy or reality. Okay, Fantasy tells us things that could not happen in real life. Example, fairies, dragons, and spaceship. Now, realistic tells us things that could really happen. Example, we have here a girl who's pulling a dog while walking. And then we also have a volcano eruption and a girl who's on top of the mountain. So let's look at some examples. Andy bought 4 volcano books. Is this fantasy or reality? That is a reality. Very good. So how do you know? Because Andy could buy books about volcanoes. Next, the genie flew out of the lamp. Is it fantasy or reality? Yes, that is fantasy because genie is not real. Genie couldn't come out of the lamp. The ant carried the entire hot dog away from the picnic. Fantasy or reality? Great, that's fantasy because an ant cannot lift an entire hot dog, maybe a piece of it. The snow fell until the ground was covered with several inches. Yes, that's reality because snow can be several inches deep and it really falls. Now let us go with some books that you might read. Friends fall into the lost and found pile and get to a hidden world of the lost items. The book is The Lost and Found. Is it fantasy or reality? Yes, that is fantasy. The tradition of Pueblo Boy and his family are explained. Great, that's reality. The life in an ant colony and the jobs each type of ant have. That must be what? The Book of an Ant. It's reality because they have evidences. The adventures of a boy who travels to an island of monsters and becomes king. It's really fantasy with fictional characters. Okay, that's it. Thank you for participating. Now let's move on to our group activity. We will have 10 minutes for this, okay? Make a fantasy or fictional short story that mainly focuses to the mission vision of DepEd, chronic illness, disasters, child labor, and present it in front of the class. So you'll be divided into 4 groups. Each group will be given 10 minutes. 5 minutes to construct and 5 minutes to present. Now with the mission vision of DepEd, it needs to be focusing on developing the learners or development of learners who has the love of country and can contribute meaningfully in building the nation by being a professional someday. So you need to think broad about this specific idea. The chronic diseases group. So it is more on having a character with heart disease, maybe cancer, chronic lung, or whatever it is. It may have depression, anxiety. So just get an idea out of this ideas here. So you need to create a short story out of this. And disasters. It can be natural calamities like tsunami, and then typhoons, burns or fire, and then landslides and earthquakes. So it's up to you on how you are going to put that inside your short story. And last, child abuse. So we need to stop this child abuse in any way possible. This needs to be your theme or plot in your short story. So research more about it since you have your laptops with you and tablets or cell phones. That's it. So we will base your scores in these rubrics. We will have the content, organization, language, and style. Now, for our assessment, which will be this. Write F if the statement is fantasy, and write R if it's reality. So number 1, when Darna eats the stone, you need to just put F or R, okay? And I will give you 5 minutes for this. 1, 2, 3. Part 2. Now, for this one, we will answer it right now. When Darna eats the stone, she will be transformed into superhero and can fight against criminals as well as greater forces of evil. That's fantasy because a lady cannot really have, or even men cannot have any superpowers. Great. You practice good manners and right conduct when you pray before eating. That is really a golden rule, right? When you are in a table setting. That is reality. Wow. You got it right. Without algebra, you'll never know how to add and subtract. Is it reality or fantasy? Yes, that is reality. Without algebra, the book, and your teacher, with the help of your teacher, then you will not understand math. The earth rotates around the sun. That is a fact or reality because we have scientific evidence. And the movie entitled The Mummy is a part of Egypt's history. That is reality as well because they have taken this movie and they also do this sa Egypt. Great. For your assignment, watch the movie Beauty and the Beast and explain what makes the movie a reality or fantasy. Now, do you still have any questions? Did you understand our... It's really good to know that all of you here understood our topic. And with that, I will leave you with this saying. We are living in a world of reality, yet it is also a world that is full of fantasy. Because sometimes we need fantasy not to escape, but to survive in reality. Do you know what it means? Yes? It simply means that all of us, we are already in reality. And for us to survive in this reality world full of problems, sometimes we need this fantasy for us to think, to us to be positive, and it really gives us strength to be positive every day in our everyday life. So I hope that all of you are um, well equipped with knowledge about fantasy and reality. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye and thank you, Mom.
Okay, have a wonderful day ahead. Bye.